Continuing with the 10 for 10 Women of the Hobby series, I'm very, very, very much looking forward to this episode. And I think you guys will be as well, because, I mean, we've done 7 of these episodes. We talk a little bit with the guests before, after, and the guest we have on today, everyone has sung their praises. So you may know her as kind of the backbone, the operations, the behind the scenes for Card Ladder. But what many of you don't know is Kristina planned much of the event for Mint Collective, right? With a lot of help, and I know you'll give the kudos, but that was a big event, and it was a really, really nice representation of what the hobby is and can be. And I think it's going to be really cool for the next 30 minutes to 45 minutes when we discuss kind of learn your story, learn how you got into the hobby, learn a little bit about what it took to plan the event, and maybe we'll get into kind of what you see for the future as well. So I'm very much looking forward to this. I hope you guys stay till the end. I think there's so much you're going to learn. Kristina, welcome to the 10 for 10 Women of the Hobby series on Lucas, Tigers, and Bronze.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate being here. It's an honor to be here in any function, but as a representation of women in this industry, it's truly honorable to show my face.
What do you have behind you right there? That's kind of cool.
This is my so I'm in the studio. This is where we record SCC. And this is my wall of ripped wax. So everything behind me, I have ripped. Yeah.
All right. That studio goes on fire. I'm knocking on wood, but that studio goes on fire. What's the first thing you're grabbing? You can only take one thing out of that. That studio goes on fire. You can only grab one thing.
Cage. They're empty.
There's nothing in there.
Ripped. No,
they're already ripped.
Oh, it's just empty boxes. It's not like the cards you pulled out of it.
All right.
Hello. Well, then it's going up on fire.
My name is Kristina, and I am a degenerate pack ripper. I cannot keep sealed wax in my house, so anything that comes in gets ripped.
So all the stuff that's there that get ripped, what's the best single you got out of it, and have you kept it all?
Oh goodness. I don't even know, like, to be honest. There's so much behind
National Treasures Maxi Kleba card. Of course.
I've never pulled a Maxi Kleba National Treasures card. That's pretty sad. I didn't open National Treasures this year, and this year was the first time he was in product. That product.
Cage got to Vegas, and like the first thing he did was he went to play slots.
That's not the first thing I did.
He often compares slots to ripping packs, and he says so simple he could just turn his brain off and just rip cards. You also play slots, blackjack, anything in Vegas?
We had a couple nights where like the group of us played craps. Like it was my first time and Chris's first time too. Chris and Josh went on a pretty nice run on the first night. And then like I think it was like the second or third night I tried to play because I'm very rule oriented. Like I like to know the lay of the land before I just like throw money around. So I was like investigating with the dealers like how to play and stuff like that. And like they were very nice to me. And then I lost $200 when I played, and then I was like, I'm done. I'd rather buy something like card related than just give my money to the casino.
That's it. Andrew's never gambled. And
never?
I think, gambling, I'd rather gamble on cards. I'm with you.
Exactly. I'm with you on that.
Kristina, so talk to us. I mean, I would say 50% of our audience was at Mint, maybe a little bit less. Maybe I'm over exaggerating, but what was it like for people that weren't there? Can you kind of paint the picture of maybe the experience you wanted people to have? And, here we are 2 weeks after, maybe some of the feedback that you've got from people that attended.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was telling you guys, myself and Josh and Chris, like as Card Ladder, we signed on to help organize with help organize Mint back in July of 2021. So it was like really important to me that we show the hobby and everyone outside the hobby exactly how much we've grown as an industry, and make this show something that's a little bit more of a card show. It's a networking event, but it's also like a learning experience. And when we signed on, we agreed that we would have Card Ladder panels. And that was like really where my focus was. Ty from Bullpen, she was the one who really focused on the marketplace with collectible, and she signed on to help with on that side. Whereas like I signed on to help with the thought leadership panels, the sessions. And I tapped like friends and colleagues, people that I hadn't met before. And I just introduced myself as people who I thought would be really would really have something to say that we might not have heard yet, or that needed reiterating to not just people in the hobby, but potentially new people who are coming in. Whether you're a collector, investor, dealer, flipper, like I don't care what you call yourself. Just as long as you do right by the people that you're interacting with, that's what really matters to me. And yeah, so like we put together this amazing show that like gave me more than a few gray hairs and sleepless nights, but it came together really well, and I couldn't have done it without the help of everyone on the team, and that includes David Marino and Jenna Stein, Blake Ulrich, Todd, Chad. I'm missing people, Greg, Ty, of course, and
Louise, Mac Daddy, right?
Oh my God, Louise. How can I forget Weezy? Weezy, like my soul sister from across the pond. Like Alex and like Ezra. Like there's just so many people that like I feel like I'm at the Oscars and something, and I'm like Academy. Like and
Andrew, play some music. Get her off the stage.
Like yeah, and then I also have to thank my business partners, Chris and Josh, for really like believing in me and taking that leap with me, where I was like, this is important and we need to put time and effort into it. And it took time away from our business. But like I said to you guys, like it was really important to me that we put together something that everyone could look at and be like, this is a great next step. It's not the final step, like it's the next step. So like the next one will be even bigger and better. And there are things that we learned by doing it that we need to apply to the next one. But it was a privilege to be able to put on a show of that caliber for the hobby. And hopefully they agree that I did an okay job, and they'll bring me on for the next one.
Okay, come on now. The only thing I'll say is this. Because I did run into you a bunch of times. I saw you, I think it was Chris's brother. You guys had a cart with like a camera set up that looked like it was from like network news. It was amazing. Did you get a chance, whether it was on Sunday as stuff was winding down, to actually enjoy the show? Because when I saw you, you were basically just running here, running there, making sure this was getting done and that was getting done. And people don't even realize that. They're like, oh, well, Kristina, she's like VIP access to this. It's her show, right? But you probably didn't even get a chance to even, enjoy the fruits of your labor.
I made it halfway down one aisle, Cage, at the cart. Like,
doesn't surprise me.
The marketplace. Halfway down one aisle, and like I was stopped like a bunch of times, and like it was a great event though. I do wish I had more time to look around at some of the people, the dealers and the vendors that were there, and really get to talk to them. That's my one like takeaway is I need to force myself to create that time to do that next year or next time. Because I didn't really get to enjoy it. It was like, it was like panel after panel, and then like checking in with speakers and making sure everything was okay with them. And like, I was working the camera for some of the panels, like for Nick, like because he was on another camera, like walking around, and I was the tripod. So like there was that, and then like we also had a booth, so like I was coordinating things over there, and Josh was like in charge of that. But like I'm a total type A, like spaz, where I'm just like checking in with him all the time, like, do you need anything, like what's going on, like, and it's not a trust issue, it's just an OCD issue.
We were talking a little bit before this, Kristina, and I mean, we brought it up on a few episodes ago, Cage, where it's not really a hobby. I think Sarah Layton said it's an industry now, right? And I think, with these Vegas conferences, there's like a consumer electronics conference, I believe, in Vegas. And my first job was with Jumio. and they sent me to Vegas for like a conference with a booth, and you kind of show off your product and all that stuff, and it's polished. It's professional for lack of a better word to kind of paint. How do we? One is, should we continue going down that route? And two is, Kristina, how do we keep doing that, right? How do we keep maybe not turning the entire hobby into an industry, but giving some people who are devoting their lives, their finances, their money into starting businesses in this space, that we keep growing against the pie, growing the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly it, right? Like, there are avenues and ways that everyone enjoys the hobby differently. And yeah, like we said, like before we went on, like it was important for me to showcase a show that shows.
Is that on my end? No.
She's frozen.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. It's important to showcase a show that boom.
That shows where we are as an industry and as the hobby, right? Like, so there are people like Chris who have changed their entire life plans and donated, like put all of their like eggs in one basket called Card Ladder and rearranged their entire lives to be in this industry and create businesses. And we have to make sure that, it's not just considered from the outside as something that kids play with. Like, this isn't, I don't know, like this is serious. Like, this is serious business. And I mean, my mom definitely still doesn't understand. Like, when I say like I'm in the sports card industry, like I had to fill out a passport application this week, and it said like what your
self-employed sports cards. I collect Maxi Kleber and Luka Doncic.
What's your occupation? And I like really like thought about it, and I was like, sports cards, like
don't lie. I saw the post. She wrote Maxi Kleber super fan as her profession. I saw it. I saw the post.
How did that happen? Are you from Dallas originally?
No, I'm
just like how they play.
No, yeah, I'm a Luka fan, and we can get into like how I became a Luka fan if you want. But like, yeah, so I'm a Luka fan who then, watching all the games, became a Maxi Kleber fan. And when I got priced out of Luka cards, which happens, when I got priced out of Luka cards, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to start collecting this other guy I like on this team that I enjoy watching. And look, I can afford his best cards, which was like a nice change of pace, because my other PC is Michael Jordan, which like I also got priced out of.
Fun fact, when we first had Chris on, you ever do this? Like, you go through your Instagram feed and just go all the way to the bottom to kind of see where you started, like started out the bottom, now we're here type of thing. Like we had Chris on, was it August of 2020 or September?
It was definitely in the first two to 3 months, 30, 40 episodes.
I thought Haj was his last name.
That's so funny.
Hoj.
Yeah.
Chris Hoj, Ali Haji Sheik, ex-kicker. But what was even better about that, Kristina, is at the time we had him on, it was so early on, I was not showing my face on the episodes, right? Because I just wasn't. I was like, all right, we'll just make it an audio podcast.
Looking face cage, you weren't showing it off.
I appreciate that, but no, I was not. I just assumed as soon as I put my face out there, everyone in my job and in my field would be like, what the hell are you doing? Baseball cards? What, and I'd be exposed and blah, blah, blah. And, I was partnering up with this handsome guy here. And, there's not many people who, we're gamblers. I know you're a gambler. Like, that's a gamble. I mean, I hitched my wagon to this guy. 3 episodes in, I figured, all right, he's going to flake. No, clearly I was wrong about that. But I didn't put my face out there. And then, in order to be like funny, like we started saying, hey, we're pretty animated. And I had my daughter like make animations of the podcast, put the voice over like little cartoons. And if you look at our feed way back 2 years ago almost, there's an animation of Chris. It's me and Andrew and Chris in like an animated studio. He's got a Bulls hat on. It's really funny.
Oh my God, I need to go find this afterwards.
Yeah, my daughter did it. It's pretty funny.
I have a feeling you can afford Luka Doncic cards now. Like, and I'm curious. I want to ask, like, people don't realize this because it feels like Card Ladder has kind of been around for a decade now, right? It's become the staple of what people use for comps. It was started during COVID, if you guys didn't know. And I actually went back to your guys' post to see that. It was kind of cool to even think about that. Did you expect Card Ladder to have all this success? I mean, it's been a big year for your team. How are you taking all that in, right? And I'm sure with great power comes great responsibility. There's also that. How are you processing everything?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I think the boys like went over this during your last podcast.
We argued with them a lot more. So.
Yeah. with the like origin stories where like Chris was like, yeah, I met Kristina at
it was school.
And then, you know, I had this really great conversation with this guy named Josh and like how we met. You know, like it was just like really funny.
It was very romantic. The Josh
literally
and
how
Chris
that happened.
meeting. It's like, yeah, Kristina. I met her in school, but Josh.
Yeah.
Josh. Yeah, exactly. It was great.
Their bromance is real. Let's just say, like, yeah.
They argue a little bit.
It works.
Luka,
It works.
Jokic versus LeBron. They argue. They give each other the business a little bit too.
They do. They definitely do. And that's like part of being like really great business partners is like, you guys know, like knowing when like the clash of like opinions is just that, but like underneath is a foundation of like trust and loyalty and support that like even when you don't agree on something fundamental like LeBron versus Jordan, you can still have your friendship, even though that like, yeah, that's a huge thing for me. I do not like LeBron and he knows it. Josh knows it. But yeah, so what was the question?
Well, I mean, think about it. 2 years, less than 2 years from now, less than 2 years ago, Card Ladder started. Here we are 2 years later. Plan Mint,
Right.
Collectors acquired Card Ladder. You know, your reach is so much more. It's not just national, it's international now. So many people use your platform. I'm curious, you know, how that's been for you, right? I know how it's been on the boys. We had them on the show. But how's that been for you?
It's been interesting. I mean, like you talk about Chris Hoge, and like at this point, people don't even know that like Hoge stands for House of Jordans, which was our podcast way back in the day. And like that's like where Card Ladder kind of started, was that Chris would report on the market of playing year Jordan inserts, and Bulls playing years, specifically. And that's like where we started. And to think that like we've now like come to where I'm like sitting on your podcast, like talking about like a show that I just helped put on with like an amazing team, and like where we've built Card Ladder and how far we're now taking it with the support at Collectors Universe is like really crazy to me. It's been a lot of hard work, and I think people know that. And like, I think that's why people were really supportive. Like when we made the announcement of the acquisition, was that they realized like Chris and I haven't had a day off since March of 2020. Like literally every day we add cards, we answer people,
Right.
and we review sales. And it's been said before, but it's important to like remind everyone, the three of us, like Josh, Chris, and myself, like every time we make a business decision, we don't ask ourselves what's in the best interest of us or our business or the bottom line or financially. We ask ourselves what's in the best interest of the hobby. And to us, like that's really important because we're more than just business, like entrepreneurs and like business owners in this industry. We're stewards of this industry. And without people who make the tough decisions to better this hobby that we love, like it all falls down like around us. If everyone's after the bottom line and like lining their pockets, then what happens to the collector? And at the end of the day, like if you took Card Ladder away from us, like I would still be collecting cards. Like, you know, like I don't like, Card Ladder's been fun, but like my passion is cards. And I love the data and I love the work and I love interacting with other collectors and investors and members and users. But like, it's the cards that bring us here and have gotten us here. So like, it's important to remember that at the end of the day, that it's the cards that are going to continue to maintain this industry, and not forget that as people kind of get greedy.
Not ticket stubs though, right?
Not to be like super like harsh like and ruin the vibe of the show.
No, I mean, it's 100% right. I mean, there's a million different ways to take it, right? I mean, you know, I think what I'm hearing is, you know, there's a seriousness to the hobby. You know, you're mirroring a lot of the stuff that Chris has put out there recently. I don't think every show has to be mint. I think you know, there can be a counterbalance, a yin and a yang.
Oh, for sure.
I'll throw out there that, you know, there might be a different way of attracting Michael Saylor to the hobby. If you remember, David Letterman wanted Oprah on his show. Now, obviously, I'm not comparing David Letterman's shtick to what the Card Ladder guys do and the crossover. It's a much more serious show, the crossover. Maybe David Letterman is more like what Andrew does. But he went on there every day and said, Oprah.
Oprah's calling you, right? Did Oprah just call you? Sometimes he gets calls and then we lose him for a second.
Okay. I was like, wait, what's happening? Okay.
We don't hear you, Cage, but it's okay.
I can't hear you. Yeah.
It happens. Maybe once every 5-6 episodes, he's gonna exit out and come back in. No, but it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting how everyone does the hobby different too, right? There is room for that institutional money to come in. There is room for people to have fun. There is room for kids. I really liked what some of the women have said is creating space for everyone to come into the hobby. It's not necessarily you have to pull people in or recruit them. That's one type of way to do it, but just creating space and seeing that, you know, there's more than one way to do this hobby. I think you guys do a good job of that too. It was cool. Are you back, Cage?
I think so.
Okay, yeah.
I think so. But yeah, I heard everything. It was a good segue. You did good there. You know, I get a phone call. It was Oprah on the other line saying she'll come on the show because I harass her. You know, I said,
what were you going with Letterman, Oprah? I didn't follow.
So it was a big bit that Letterman did this for a while. He wanted to have Oprah on his show, and she continued to say no. And so he went like 500 episodes in a row saying at the end, like, Oprah, you're going to come on my show. Oprah, you coming on my show? You know, like, I'm going to get Oprah. And finally, she's like, all right, enough of a groundswell of this, wherever it got back to Oprah that he was doing this. And she was like, all right, I'll just come on the show. Just forget it. I'll come on the show. So maybe what Chris needs to do is just, you know, he has to like tag Michael Saylor every day in a story and be like, Michael Saylor, we're going to be awesome.
Wants is institutional money, right? And not necessarily he wants it. I think he's suggesting that for this to really grow, and it happened in the crypto world. I'm speculating, Kristina, and I apologize. I'll popcorn it to you. For this whole pie to grow, some institutional money would help.
I mean, I won't speak to what Chris thinks. I've learned my lesson on that. not to do so. And always ask him if he wants to attend things instead of just making plans for both of us. But I think that what he's been trying to say is that for cards to become an alternative asset class that people are ready to spend big money in, we need to get serious a little bit about some of the things that we put out as a group of individuals.
Makes sense. I mean, I completely agree with that. And I think Mint was a good step in the right direction because, you know, we weren't planning it back in July with those guys, but, you know, we did have a lot of conversations with them, you know, about the show, what it meant. And, you know, honestly, behind the scenes, and I'm not saying anything I shouldn't be saying here, their overarching goal was to paint the hobby as an industry, to paint the industry in a good light and attract people who would not be attracted by the kind of shows that we previously have had. And I think it was successful in that. And I think in a large part due to you and the folks who planned it. You know, think of the coverage it got from Peyton Manning. I mean, the day I got home, I saw on ESPN, Peyton's quote was on ESPN and it said the Mint Collective. You know, I've never seen ESPN's quote the National or quote the Dallas show or anything like, you know, so I mean, like, you know, I know that was it's a one-off kind of Peyton Manning quote thing, but it's still kind of cool. You know what I mean? It's still like, that's an attention grabbing thing. And, you know, the panels are something that were completely different, I believe. And but
Losing
out
you, brother.
is a venture capitalist, that type of thing, which I think is what they were trying to attract. Yeah, I'm home alone. Nobody's messed with the internet, but my thing's been terrible the entire time. So I'm going to exit out and go back in.
Happened. No,
but
it's better now.
I've been awful the whole time. Okay.
Yeah. I think that you're right. Like I was excited to see that a show that like we were sponsoring and involved in got ESPN FaceTime and notoriety through that to that extent. That was really fun. I also just don't want to downplay like all the effort and work that other shows put in. Like we have a long-standing tradition in our industry of the National being the show every year, and I know that the men and women who work on that do so all year round to make it the best that they can. And this wasn't to replace the National or to be in competition with the Dallas Card Show, which also everyone on that team works really hard and does a great job. It's just it was a time, like it was a show that we could kind of envision a little differently than what we're used to as a hobby, and make it more of like an industry conference like Andrew was talking about with
CES.
forgive me, what I'm sorry, what was it?
CES.
Consumer electronics, I think it's
Consumer electronics, yeah. But what was the company that you worked for?
It was a company called Jumio, and we did we helped Bitcoin companies, believe it or not, verify people using the camera. We would take their ID and we would scan it and verify it in under a minute. And it would kind of allow you to create even people who use Coinbase still use Jumio, would allow you to get your ID verified right there on your phone because everything was moving digitally. How do you KYC? How do you know your customer as a company? We would do that. We would do demos. We even got into like kind of credit card scanning and all that stuff. So, and we would demo it right there. And it was my first like, whoa, this is what conferences look like. This is what the networking events they taught us in college would be like. And I didn't go to Mint. It was my sister. She just graduated college. So we got a house here.
Congratulations.
It was like a family vacation. Thank you. What's her?
I said to her.
On.
Yeah.
Huh?
Not to you. What did you do? She graduated college. You just stood there and clapped your hands for her. Congratulations to her. That's a huge accomplishment. Sorry.
I worked hard to afford the house. But no, it's like this is what networking is like. And it was cool. I didn't get to go to Mint. That was the point. But it was, from what I heard, it was a lot of businesses and a lot of business relationships, I think, will come from that conference. And how do these two companies work together, right? Because for us to also grow the pie, tell me if you agree with this, disagree with this, even perceived competitors aren't actually competitors, right? There's kind of room for everyone in this tiny little pizza pie. And we might want to start working together a little bit more, collaborating a little bit more, because sometimes that frustrates me, maybe 1 out of 7 days a week at most, is the infighting within the hobby, right? It feels more like neighboring countries going to war with each other versus brothers or cousins kind of getting into a playful fight. Like I think Chris and Josh, they're playful brothers, you know? And like, he's the older, that's good. But sometimes I feel like within the hobby, we get into a bit of like we really have venom behind what we say to other businesses or other. And when you see people in person at like a thought leadership conference, you can disagree, but it feels a little bit more light.
Andrew's still mad about being called a slob.
I'm really not. Really not. All the negative stuff, it doesn't concern me. Like it doesn't hit me. I'm a nobody in the hobby. But sometimes you see a little bit of animosity between big businesses in the space.
Yeah, I mean sometimes, but I mean often it's warranted. I'm not gonna put Kristina on the spot, so often it's warranted.
No, I mean, look, part of my job at Card Ladder is business partnerships and business relationships, right? Like, I work with the auction houses and the marketplaces and the content creators and our affiliate partnerships. Like those, that's all me. Like I'm the one who's networking and creating these these relationships in the hobby. And I love it. Like, I love being able to talk to people about things that we're passionate about. And like, what's the best way to start like a meeting besides like talking about sports, right? Like being able to just like jump in with like, oh, did you see that game last night? Or like, I'm like Cage, like I'm watching the New York Yankees and the Sox right now. Like
Right now.
Right now. And that's how you start conversations. And it's not forced and it's not like awkward. It's something like we're all passionate about, and it's an easy way to jump in and create that relationship. I will say though that there are exceptions to that rule that you just laid out, Andrew, where I think that some of the animosity that you feel or you see is warranted, like Kate is saying, and it is what it is. But sometimes things happen behind the scenes that people aren't aware of purposefully, because people don't want to draw attention away from what they're building or working on and air dirty laundry or bad business practices out in front of everyone. So I'll just say that.
So 2 things. Mint Collective 2.0. Are you already working on the next one? Because if you started July last time, are you already like fully engaged? You have a place planned. You already have a list of the panels. You know, can Andrew moderate 4 or 5 of them? Because he's a very good moderator. And then after that, because I want to know whether or not that's kind of in the works, if you got any like sneak previews for us, because they'd be silly not to bring you back to plan the second one. And then Women in the Hobby, which is part of why you're here. You know, where we've come in the last 6 months and where we're going in the next year, and what can the hobby do to kind of help foster that. So lots of stuff there. I'm just going to let you go with it.
Okay. First, Mint 2.0. Let's go. Haven't really talked to anyone about it. Previous to Mint actually happening, I did sign on to help with future events. Haven't had meetings about them yet though. So I think everyone's still in that 2-week period where they're just like decompressing after pulling off a successful show, taking in feedback and how we can apply it to the next show. Do I have panels like in my mind and like already planned out? Yes. Like we had 4 official card ladder panels at the Mint Collective this past year, or like in the last 2 weeks. But beyond that, like I helped with the other card panels, getting speakers and tapping people to talk. And I would like to do that again. I really had a lot of fun, like curating some of the conversations. And I have a list of panels that like weren't like vetoed, but we didn't have time to really get into over the day and a half that were the panels. Can Andrew moderate? Like he was supposed to, Cage. He was supposed to.
That's true. That's true.
It was actually going to be a panel with Ken Golden and then I was going to moderate Ken.
It was just going to be Ken talking and Andrew moderating him.
It would actually be kind of fun. I'm not going to lie. It would have been a fun panel. My stupid questions and Ken's long rants intertwined.
And then you both pulled out. So
would have been great. Next time,
great.
Mint 2.0. Here we go. Ken by himself,
Christina,
Andrew moderating.
What's your dream panel? Any 4 people in the world. You can't say Chris or Josh. Any 4 people. Who do you
Dead or alive? Do they have to be alive? Do they have to be in the hobby?
They do not have to be alive. They do not have to be alive.
Wow, that's awesome. You can put like Mike Tyson and Gandhi next to each other and see what happens.
No, okay. Great. So I would want it to be hobby specific. So I want a panel with Dr. James Beckett, who's like my icon. Like I adore him and he knows it. I totally fangirl over him every time I see him and he's like, "Oh, Kristina, stop." And I'm like, "I can't, sir." And then there's Nat Turner, Josh Luber. And I don't know who my 4th would be. Maybe Andrew could moderate it for us.
Yeah.
What's the topic? What are we leaving the audience
topic
with?
Is the hobby. So like one of the panels that we did was with Josh Luber. It was the 3 of us from Card Ladder and Josh Luber. And we talked about data, the hobby, and the future. and how important data is to our industry. And like, it was really fun because we might be the only 4 people who really understand what vetting data takes, because he did it when he started Campless and then turned it into StockX. And like what it is to like stay up all night and work on like making sure a sale is like consummated and like what it is to provide clean, accurate data to an industry to help build that industry into what you think it could be, based on your passion for cards, or in his case, shoes. And I love that energy that he brings to cards and like from his background, because he knows how important what Card Ladder is to help grow our industry. And so that was my dream panel, right? Like for Last Mint. So my future dream panel would probably be Dr. Beckett and Nat and Josh Luber. Yeah.
And an athlete. We throw an athlete in there just a business. No.
No, I don't care about that.
It's only 2 people. I want Gary V and Nat Turner, and I want to call it collecting versus investing. The future of the hobby. And making both
give their, by the way,
they can give their one, and both could be right. They can give their opinions. They can give their, hey, this is what I think. This is what I think. And I think it would be.
That's more of a debate. Though.
No.
I think there would be. Well, anytime you put 2 people against each other, that's.
No, I think there'd be more common ground than you think.
When debates, there sometimes are as well. But I think there should be debates actually in the hobby. I think a lot is learned through a good debate.
That's how you debate.
Old school?
Yeah, Andrew. We got
Kristina,
all right. So the women.
What goes into clean data though? Like,
no,
is it
I don't
as
want to know
simple
about that.
as?
I'm gonna go to sleep.
Because I don't think a lot of people out there realize, like, you hear about shilling, right? But what if an auction that shilled is paid for? Is that a true comp?
Yes.
Or is it right? Like, and I don't know. I truthfully don't know. So I'm curious.
I'm only one opinion.
Sure.
But I think that yes, like as long as it's paid for, it's a comp.
Agreed.
When a new product releases where that has no market, right? I oftentimes talk about market making, and you see this more in stocks and private markets than you do in cards. No one really knows the price of what something should be, right? Some people say the price is what someone's willing to pay. And when there's such a new product on the market, it has no real comps. What if the creator wants to create comps for it, right? Set a market floor. This is what we should, we just know this. I'm not, this is what we think it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And they pay for it. They set a market floor, and then they say, my product is released to the market. Is that a true comp? I'm curious.
So I think that when there is no market for something, or if you have a 1-of-1 card, the comp isn't just what someone's willing to pay for it. It's what someone's willing to sell it for. And I think that making a comp is a dangerous road, and we should not travel down it. But you can put your card up on eBay and say 10,000 OBO for this 1-of-1. And then as offers come in, you kind of feel for the market of what collectors are willing to pay for it. But at the end of the day, like as the seller, you are the market judge of what you're willing to let it go for. You don't need to create a comp in order to set a market. You just, as the owner, need to have a floor that you're not willing to let it go at. And I think that if we all just took a mini course in ethics, it might be better for our industry. Because
I'm glad you went there, because it's not as clear cut as people may seem to think it is. And what's interesting that I've learned about the space is there's a lot of new people that have entered, but we're sort of playing by unwritten old rules. You know, like I remember Tatis, he did a bat flip, and people were freaking out. They're like, he didn't break a rule; he broke the unwritten rules of baseball, right? And what's interesting is there's a lot of unwritten rules about card collecting. Yet 2020, we've kind of added, let's say, 40% more buyers. And they might not know the unwritten rules of collecting and selling and buying.
So this reminds me of a great professor I had in undergrad who would always talk to us about the three different stages of like rules, as you're saying. There are laws, there are guidelines, and then there are norms. And those are three separate things. So laws are like what we put in place, like with eBay, like, or with a marketplace where you're like, this is what it takes for a sale to be like paid, and this is how things are. And then there are guidelines of this is how you really like rules, but like not like actual laws. And then there are the norms. There are the social aspects of collecting that we kind of like, I think you're saying like the unwritten rules would really be under norms of like, it's not breaking any rules or laws in the hobby, in our industry, but it doesn't really leave a good taste in other people's mouths when you break those norms. And I think that that's like an important distinction. Like, it's not that they're unwritten, even though they are unwritten. It's more like that's the culture, and that has been the culture, and we can change the culture, right? Like at any point, like people can change culture, but it's important to like, and I studied anthropology in undergrad, so I'm all about culture. Like, it's important to nod to culture when you're coming into something. Like, if you come in and just say to people they suck, they need to change, and like this is how it should be, like your reaction, like their reaction to you is very aggressive, because they're like, who are you? Why would you say that? And why should I even take you seriously? Whereas like if you come into a culture and you say, I'm going to watch, or I'm going to learn how things are now, and then you start changing things based on how you interact, or based on how like you create friends, and then your friends groups are all like starting to interact or change culture that way. Like, that's important. And I think that we should be respectful of the norms that currently exist in the hobby, because they've gotten us here. And it's important to remember like the French Revolution. Like, don't just chop off everyone's heads and like think you can start brand new and like everything will be better, because that's not how it works, right? Like, you can't just like change everything and expect everything to be rosy. Like, you have to have concrete plans in place, and small fundamental changes are how things actually last.
So we've done, I mean, 641 episodes, and I don't get to share this enough, but like that's kind of been the blessing in disguise for starting on this podcast, right? It is the conversations. I come from a family that's very opinionated, and it was sometimes fights, but it would be fights that would be settled at the kind of the dinner table. You know what I mean? I think the crossover does a really good job of that. Like, Chris and Josh don't always agree, but they're like, we're going to hash it out. We're going to discuss ideas. We're never going to go after each other personally. We're going to talk about the ideas. That's been a blessing in disguise for me as kind of a host of this show. And that's what I'm learning. That's what I want to share with our audience. I think why Kay dropped off is we're recording this, guys, at 5 p.m. Eastern. 5 p.m., 5:05. And his kids get home literally right at this time. So it was a little bit on me for scheduling. I sent Kristina a Google Meet link instead of StreamYard. She thought we were pranking her. I said, we're not that kind of show. It's my mess up. Last question, yeah. I'll let you go, Kristina. And this could be for the whole hobby, not necessarily advice, but like, I'm starting a podcast. I'm starting a business. I want to open up an LCS, whatever it is, etc. Any advice, any suggestions, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important to like understand who you are and how you collect or invest or how you hobby, and really stay true to who you are and how you do things. Don't try to fit the mold of what you think others want to hear or see, because that's not going to be fun for you. And like, if you're creating content just to create content, like you're not going to be inspired in 6 months. It's going to be 3 episodes and you're going to all flake out, right? Like it's not going to last for 2 years and be an amazing podcast like the Luka Nation. Like, so I think that it's important to like be true to yourself and how you hobby, because everyone hobbies differently, and it's important to like show that, because like, I mean, I've gotten more followers and more messages like since I started showing off my Maxi Kleba PC than I ever did like
fun
with that than I ever did like showing my Luka Grails, right? Like because they were just like another person has Luka Grails, like okay, like but like Maxi Kleba and like explaining like the stories behind them, how I'm getting them and stuff. People are like, oh my gosh, like this is interesting, it's unique, it's fun. She's on a chase for a rainbow. Like I'm very honest with my frustration and like how I'm very at the mercy of the hobby and collectors right now and like wax rippers, because I have 4 cards left of the 46 parallels in the 2020 Prism Rainbow for Maxi Kleba, the first year he was in Prism. And those
if
4
people are
cards,
listening, what are the 4? So if people are listening, they might,
White Sparkle, Bronze out of 20, Neon Green out of 5. Oh my god.
Nebula? You got the Nebula?
I have all 1 of 1s. Yeah.
It was badass.
Yeah. So but yeah, so oh goodness. Oh, Gold Shimmer out of 10. I have 2 golds, but I don't have a Gold Shimmer. Yeah, so like those are the 4 cards that I need to finish my rainbow. And like I'm being very open with people about that frustration, and I mean, I had people messaging me like from Mint at the card show being like, oh, like I checked like this area, I didn't see any Klebas, and like, oh, I asked these dealers, they didn't have any Klebas. Like I get messages from people who go to other shows, and like people are asking and looking around for me, and it's so amazing. And like Ryan, Card Collector 2, has had 2 really hard to find Maxis come into his shop, and he just sent them to me. And like I've had other Maxi collectors like trade with me so that I can have the card that I'm looking for, and I give them like another Maxi card or a couple Maxi cards that like I have extras of. And like that is what the hobby's about. Like that collector mentality is, at the end of the day, like what is driving prices. And I think that that's important to remember. Like there has to be a collector at the end of the chain beyond flippers, dealers, and investors who want to buy that product and keep it, because without them keeping it, like it's just a hot potato.
It's true. It's very true. It's very true. A couple clarifications here, because I'm hoping you guys can hear me. Number 1, the French Revolution was not that bad. People got to eat cake. 2,
that's not how that worked.
Ethics.
How could they eat cake without a head?
Just straight down the neck. Boom. So the ethics norms, I love that conversation. That, however, is not a license, Andrew, to shill bid. That was not what she was saying, right? That is not what she's trying to change. The culture changed, the unwritten rules changed. That does not mean that because it's not illegal to shill bid an eBay auction that it's okay to do it, right? So, that's that. It's not for you. I'm not saying you do. I'm not saying you do this. Well, you were talking about how, hey, I'm going to set a price, and if there's shill bid, and someone still pays, and then we segued from that, someone setting their own market, into the difference between norms and rule violations of the whole deal. I just want to make sure that our listeners out there, Kristina is not saying that the cultural change is it's ever going to be okay to shill bid. that 100%, like that's not what we're changing. That's not the unwritten rule we're talking about here.
Yeah,
don't do that.
Don't get me in trouble. Like, please, yeah.
No. I mean, small stuff, like institutional investment and that kind of stuff. Changing the way we collect, changing the type of cards that are collected, the type of assets that get collected. You name it, over time. It's, believe it or not, it has happened in our hobby. We go through cycles. It was a raw only hobby, and it took a while for grading to be accepted in the hobby. When PSA came in, when card grading came in, most of the hobby was like, get out of here with that crap. And it took a while, right? And I'm sure PSA, Collectors Universe, I'm sure Beckett, they, like you said, were understanding of the culture, on the history of how the hobby was there, and didn't just force themselves on people. They worked their way into it. And now look, who could think of the hobby without PSA, without SGC, without Beckett, right? It's just, it takes a little time, and you have to be mindful of how you do it. Before we let you go, women in the hobby.
What about
women in the hobby?
You're here.
You're here. Exactly, here. How do we have more of you here? And what can the hobby do to help bolster it, besides having 10 for 10?
Well,
All Andrew's idea, by the way.
When a mommy loves a daddy, or even for the night, what happens 9 months later is a little boy or a little girl.
Nice.
And
this is all true.
50-50 shot that it's a little girl. And that's how women get here.
It's true. Into the hobby, though. Because they're not born collecting cards.
I mean, how did you get here? Like, why does it have to be different for women?
My father said, hey, let's go buy some cards. And I have a lot of male friends who have daughters who don't say to them, let's go buy cards. So the easy answer, without you, trying to make me look like an asshole, is to say, hey, dads, if you have a daughter, make sure they collect. Don't just buy cards for your son. Easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like one way. Another, like, and Ty has talked about this as well, like that nostalgia that men have for buying cards when they're kids, when they, like, a lot of men, there are also women who bought cards as kids.
Yep.
But like that nostalgia that men have, like when they have, like after they've left the hobby, they come back into it a lot of the times when they start having additional income, and they can start buying some luxury items or non-necessities for their everyday life. And as they get back into the hobby, they realize that they have this nostalgia for it. Like, it reminds them of being a kid, of simpler times, of things they've done with their father or their uncle or their friends. And that nostalgia really drives them back into collecting. And then it becomes like, well, I want to find that card that I couldn't afford as a kid or never pulled like as a kid. And that drives them into a grail chase. But like that nostalgia is like the first step. And I think that you hit it spot on when you say, like, if you're a girl dad or girl mom and you're collecting, like, don't just take your sons after Little League to the card store. Like, take your daughters after soccer practice or after ballet. And I'm really hopeful that with the addition of ZeroCool cards, we're going to see licensed product that potentially, like, little girls will love. Like, maybe it is a ballet collection where, like, they work with, like, the New York City Ballet and they create, like, a box that, like, is about all the ballerinas. And then you have, like, little girls who are dancers, and, like, a lot of little girls, like, dance every day and go, like, get into competitive dancing, who then become card fanatics. Get it?
Yeah. Yes. Well done. Well done.
Thank you. And like, there are different avenues to get girls involved. And I mean, I think that it's important to remember that, like, it also doesn't have to be about gender. Like, what you do with your son, you can do with your daughter, and what you do with your daughter, you can do with your son. Like, it doesn't have to be like girls, play soccer or do ballet. Like, no, like, girls are also into gymnastics and football and hockey, and like, those are things that I think we need to, as a society larger than just the hobby, start recognizing that there are girls out there who are kicking ass and taking names, and we need to give them a little more support. And I'm hopeful for what the future brings, and I'm excited. And then I just want to say one more thing.
Go ahead.
Don't treat women differently. Like, be respectful, but a collector is a collector. It has nothing to do with your gender. Like, so, like, saying, like, I don't know. I just wanted to say that, like, it's important, I think, for all of us to remember that we're all just here to have fun. And as long as we're respectful of each other, like we'll all keep having fun.
I'm glad you mentioned ZeroCool real quick, because
Yeah.
I agree. Non-sport is a good way to bring in new people, not just women, just new people in general. How do you think ZeroCool has been received by the hobby, and even should that matter because we're bringing new people in?
So I mean, I think that the hobby itself has really forgotten what ZeroCool was set out to be, and that is the culture cards of Fanatics trading cards. Tops is the sports cards leg of Fanatics trading cards. If you don't like non-sport cards, then why would you expect to like ZeroCool cards? And just like people who only like non-sport cards, why would you care what Topps is doing with sport cards? And I think that it's not for everyone, and that's okay. I totally understand why they would do the first product with Gary V. From a marketing standpoint and a business standpoint, it's kind of genius. Like, the man has a lot of followers. He has a lot of marketing. He's literally in marketing and entertainment. And then he has that, like, he said though before that, like, when he's gotten into the hobby, like, he didn't get the best reaction as himself. So like, I think this was like a way to like reach, like, give an olive branch out of being like, okay, like, come back into the hobby. It's not just all sports cards. I also am excited because like an NFT became a piece of cardboard. Like, I think that's kind of freaking awesome. Like, instead of sports cards are NFT, like, make your sports card an NFT, and NFTs are awesome. We now have like Gary V and Josh Luber at ZeroCool, like, all being like, look, your NFT is a physical collectible now, which is like an interesting concept, I think, and it has more history. Don't fight me, Andrew, please. It has a more historical.
I love what you're saying. I really do.
So like, I get it. Like, I think that people who didn't get it or were upset by it, I mean, I think it was a little short-sighted, like, not trying to start any fights, don't at me. But like, I think it was a little short-sighted of what they're building at ZeroCool. And like, in order to build something, you have to show like what you're building is wanted and valued by people in order to continue building it. And I think they did a great job. I love how transparent they are at ZeroCool. I love the blind Dutch auction, like the true blind Dutch auction. And I really like want to give them and their team the opportunity and the leeway, like, to continue working towards everything they are. I will say that, like, with this new release of Jackass, like, I kind of love it because, like, I was a kid in the 2000s when Jackass was huge. And, like, I was saying on Clubhouse yesterday, like, my friends, like, I was a tomboy, surprise, surprise. And, like, my friends growing up, all the boys in the neighborhood, like, they would try those stunts that the Jackass kids were doing, like, when they were, like, in their 20s and, like, we were, like, in our, like, in grade school. And like, seeing Johnny Knoxville now with like gray hair, like as a silver fox, is kind of like weird to me. Like, as like little kid brain inside my head, like can't like grasp it. But it's really funny, and it's really interesting. And I think that it's a great way for people who maybe didn't collect cards as kids, who loved Jackass and like literally stole shopping carts like my friends did, and ride them down the sledding hill in the neighborhood and like busted their freaking faces open. Like, cause like that warning before the show, like that was literally directed at the kids I grew up with. And they didn't listen.
I think it's a cool follow-up to V-Friends, by the way. I mean, look at the price point. Look at it's for a collector, right? It's $101 a box, right? It's checking a lot of boxes, right? It's a price point that people who want it can get it. Right, it's resale will probably, even if people are doing it probably won't be that crazy. And you're right, it's a cultural collectible for people who enjoyed that, for people who were fans of it, right?
Yeah.
I kind of like
And
it. And that's, I think, what we're going to see with ZeroCool going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's traditional IP, right? Like that's what everyone keeps saying. Like it's a movie and it was a TV show that they're now forming into cards. And like I think that like people are starting to grasp it in a different way that they couldn't with NFTs. And part of that is like there's a huge divide between NFT collectors and sports cards collectors in the hobby because of some like people who've pushed NFTs on people that they, like I said about culture, like when you come in and start saying like everything you're doing is wrong, the people who are there get aggressive because they get defensive. And I think that this is more like palatable to hobbyists that like, oh, it's traditional IP, it's a movie, it's Jackass. Like we all watched Jackass like when we were kids or we know about it. So it's really interesting and I'm really excited to see what they come out with next.
It's a nice end thing. People don't realize this. In the 89, when I was 13 years old, I collected Ken Griffey Jr. baseball cards. But in 1989, the first big Batman release came out with Michael Keaton as Batman, and they made cards for it. You know, traditional IP with cards. If that wasn't your thing, you didn't have to collect it. You could buy the Griffey Juniors, you could buy the Donruss, you could buy the Fleer. But if you like that movie, you could also buy the movie's card. I mean, like, it's the same kind of thing, right? It could be an and, doesn't have to be an or. The Batman stuff's not encroaching on Griffey. You know, I mean, it's the same kind of thing.
Exactly.
Kristina.
And that's what I meant with the ZeroCool and the tops. Like they are separate entities under the same umbrella. Like, and I think that that's something that people need to like really start to understand.
I mean, 99% of our following is already following Card Ladder. Kristina, where can people follow you? Send you Maxi Kleba cards or maybe send you references of where they could find one. Where can they follow you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Kristina's PC, KRISTINASPC. And that's a throwback to anyone who's watched House of Jordans. Yeah.
Let's go.
Thank you, Kristina. We appreciate your time.
BANANAS.
BANANAS. That's you, Andrew. You're bananas.
Is that what that's from now?
No,
they did that on their original podcast.
Yeah, that's just the way I would spell it out for people. Because like if you say Kristina's PC, everyone tried to find me on on CH, and like no one could find me. So then I had to start spelling it, and like for some reason my tone always like inflected on the SPC. So that's just it's not a thing, Andrew. It's just a thing.
Thank you guys. Love you, Luka Nation. Say bye, Kate.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.
Bye.